5 minutes ago, the courtroom wasn't silent. It was chaos. Reporters were whispering in corners, phones vibrating in pockets, camera flashes barely held back by the rules of federal court. It was day 9 of the trial, officially titled United States versus Sean Combs, but everyone knew it simply as the Diddy case. The room had already seen Cassie Ventura's testimony burn through any illusion of innocence. Will Smith had been subpoenaed. Even Monique had taken a stand. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what happened next. There was no prior notice, no official call, no leaked press advisory. And yet, just as the prosecutor shuffled his notes and the defense lawyers leaned back with smug predictability, the heavy double doors at the back creaked open, and everything stopped. 2 U.S. Marshals turned instinctively. A rustle of suits and stifled gasps swept across the benches like a sudden gust of wind. The figure who stepped through wasn't some shaken witness or a nervous executive. He didn't belong to either side of the legal teams. It was Ice Cube. Not actor Ice Cube. Not rapper-turned-Hollywood producer Ice Cube. No, it was the Ice Cube. The one from the protest anthems, from the straight stairs into the system. He wasn't there for optics. He wasn't there to be polite. And he didn't walk in empty-handed. In his right hand was a black leather folder. The kind that screams, "I didn't come to speculate. I brought proof." The judge raised an eyebrow but didn't object. The prosecution team whispered frantically, and Diddy, up until then stone-faced, shifted for the first time all morning. His foot tapped involuntarily. His jaw tightened. There was no mistaking the look in his eyes, panic. Cube walked down the aisle like he'd walked that hallway in his head 1,000 times. Unbothered, steady, silent. When he reached the front, he looked straight at the judge and said, "I wasn't invited. I came because I can't stay quiet anymore." A beat of silence. Then the judge, surprisingly calm, gave a single nod. "Mr. Jackson, please proceed." Cube turned to the jury. Not a smile. Not a glance to the crowd. Just direct eye contact with every single juror, one by one, as if he wasn't giving a statement. He was taking attendance. "You know my face," he said, voice low and even. "But you don't know my story. Not all of it. And if I don't say it now, no one will." That was the moment the air shifted. The courtroom wasn't just listening, it was bracing. Cube placed the folder on the witness table, opened it, and pulled out the first sheet. "This," he said, "isn't about a single man. This is about a system." He let that hang. "I've watched this industry reward obedience and punish truth. I've seen it up close. The smiles, the invitations, the opportunities. But they're not what you think. Behind the fame is a circle, and inside that circle are rules, unspoken, enforced, and dangerous to break." He turned his gaze directly at Diddy, and he didn't just play by those rules. He helped write them. Cube didn't need a script. His voice was steady, but underneath it was heat. Years of silence calcified into one moment. "They tell you it's just Hollywood," he said. "But it ain't just lights and cameras. There's a gate. And behind it, there's a different game being played." The courtroom was still. Even the usually twitchy court sketch artist had stopped drawing. Cube slid a second sheet out of the folder. This time, it wasn't just notes. It was a printed email, partially redacted, with a subject line that read, "Private access RSVP. Quincy Jones estate. Discretion mandatory." "The parties you read about," Cube said, holding up the page. "They weren't just celebrations. They were vetting grounds. They didn't want you there because you were famous. They wanted you because they needed leverage." He looked straight at the prosecution. "Ask your next witness about the no-phone policy. Ask them about the masked guests. Ask them who kept the footage." At this point, Diddy's legal team finally stirred. His lead attorney leaned in to whisper something, but Cube cut through the tension like a razor. "You want names," he said. Silence. "Jamie Foxx." Gasps. "He told me in confidence." But confidence dies in silence. He said, "Cube, I've seen things I can't unsee." He didn't laugh when they laughed. He didn't play dumb. That's why they came for him. He paused. "You remember 2023? When Jamie collapsed? That wasn't no accident. That wasn't just a health scare. That was a message. Play along or disappear. Cube let the silence speak before continuing. And Oprah, he said. One word. Heavy as an anvil. She wasn't in the back room. She was at the front door. Shock rippled through the gallery. Cube reached into the folder again and pulled out a blurry photo. Oprah, Diddy, and Jamie, mid-conversation, at an event listed as a private recovery retreat. The date? 3 weeks before Jamie vanished from public view. She told him to clean up, to fall in line. And when he didn't, he tapped the photo. She handed him over to Quincy. Now the judge leaned forward, brows furrowed. Cube didn't flinch. Quincy Jones, the godfather, the one they all answer to. You think it ends with Diddy? He's just a gatekeeper. Quincy owns the keys. At that moment, a sound broke the courtroom's trance. Diddy's pen snapped in his grip. Cube turned to the jury once more. This isn't about gossip. This is about a system that feeds on silence. And Jamie, he broke it. So they broke him back. He took a breath, looked at the judge, and said, "You can call it hearsay. You can call it coincidence. But I call it what it is. Control. Blackmail. Fear. And I won't be quiet anymore." The courtroom no longer felt like a space for justice. It felt like a vault cracking open. Cube stood there, unwavering, as if he had been rehearsing this speech his entire life. But it wasn't performance. It was purging. "You think these events were just parties?" he asked, his tone dipping low. "Let me tell you what they really were, loyalty tests." He reached into the folder again and pulled out a simple white card, unremarkable except for a name printed in gold. The summit hosted by Combs Enterprises. "That right there," Cube said, holding the card aloft. "That's what they send you. No location. Just a driver, a time, and a dress code. You don't RSVP. You obey." The jurors leaned forward, absorbing every word. Cube scanned the room, then continued. "It starts innocent. A private dinner. A rooftop mixer. Industry names. You're thinking it's just networking. That's what I thought the first time. I walked in thinking I was about to shake hands with future partners." He paused, locking eyes with Diddy. But they weren't looking for partners. They were looking for compliance. Cube described the setting. Sprawling estates in the hills, phones taken at the door, NDAs waiting on silver trays. You don't ask questions. You sign. That's the rule. He detailed how attendees were grouped. A-listers in one wing, newcomers in another. Cameras discreetly mounted behind artwork. Security dressed like staff. And the guests, carefully chosen, deliberately positioned. "I started noticing the patterns," he said. "They'd seat you beside someone who had already been broken in. Someone smiling too hard. Someone watching more than talking." He held up a photograph. A still from what he claimed was security footage leaked by a whistleblower. In the grainy image, Diddy, an unnamed actor, and a masked figure in a lounge chair. This wasn't TMZ material. This was leverage, Cube said, and it was just one of hundreds. He took out a USB stick and placed it gently on the table. Here's what no one wants to say out loud. Diddy didn't just party. He collected. Now the room felt colder. He called it insurance. Everyone else called it the file system. The judge looked unsettled. The prosecution team froze. Even the stenographer paused briefly, uncertain whether to keep typing. "Once you're in the file," Cube continued, "you're never out. They've got footage. Photos. Audio. I've seen it. Some of it recorded without consent, some under the influence." A man in the gallery visibly swallowed hard. Cube didn't stop. "I've had 2 actors, big names, call me crying, saying they woke up with no memory and a signed NDA in their email. One said he was offered a movie deal 2 days later. The other, he never worked again." The weight of his words dropped like stones. "This was the system," Cube said, voice tightening. "A reward-punishment loop. Play the game, and you rise. Question it, and you disappear." He leaned in. And the scariest part? It wasn't just Diddy behind it. Cube let the silence build, then broke it with precision. "You think Diddy was the top of the pyramid?" he asked. "No, he was just the recruiter. The real architects? You don't see them on magazine covers. you see their protégés. He opened the folder again. This time, not papers, photographs. He fanned them across the table like a magician laying down cards, except these weren't tricks. They were weapons. Photo 1. Quincy Jones at a black tie gala, hand on the shoulder of a visibly uncomfortable young actor. Photo 2. Oprah with a group of executives at a supposed youth mentorship brunch, except every attendee was already under NDA with Combs Enterprises. Photo 3. A blurry image of a private plane interior. Jamie Foxx asleep. Diddy smiling. A third figure barely visible, but unmistakable to those in the room. Cube pointed to the photos one by one. Quincy wasn't mentoring. He was managing assets. Oprah wasn't inspiring. She was recruiting. Jamie, he was the canary in the coal mine, and nobody listened. He lifted a sheet of paper and read aloud from it. Event access log, July 11th, 2018. Location, private estate, Santa Barbara. Guests confirmed. Diddy, Jamie Foxx, Oprah Winfrey, Quincy Jones. Status, cleared. The courtroom buzzed. He continued. This was one of 9 similar events. Different locations. Same structure. Always the same core group. Always new faces, handpicked. Cube turned to the jury. They built a machine. A layered one. You had the scouts, people like Diddy, throwing the parties, pulling the talent. Then you had the handlers, the ones with the charm, the influence, mentors, they called them. Oprah, Quincy, even a few retired icons you'd never suspect. He walked slowly across the courtroom, as if giving a lecture. Behind them, the archivists, the ones who stored everything. Video, contracts, testimonies. That's who kept the file system running. He held up a final page. One with just a series of initials and wire transfers. You think this is about fame. It's about debt. Once they've got something on you, you owe. You sing the song they write. You star in the film they fund. You give the speech they approve. A young juror shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Cube lowered his voice. And when you try to step away, when you say no, they don't come for you with lawsuits. They come with silence. You stop getting calls. Your projects get pulled. And then, one day, your face disappears from the screen altogether. He looked toward the gallery. Tell me how many rising stars vanished overnight. How many rumors started right after someone refused an invitation? The room was dead quiet. Cube stepped back to the witness stand. Diddy was a player, he said. But the game? That belongs to the people who taught him how to play. Cube exhaled slowly, then spoke more softly than before. They didn't just record you. They didn't just control you. They reminded you, quietly, efficiently, what would happen if you forgot your place. He turned back to the jury. Let me tell you about the call I got. The room held its breath. It was 2003. Early days of barbershop. I was hot off that success. Studios were calling. Brand deals. Offers coming in from every coast. Then, one night, my assistant hands me a burner phone. Unmarked. Just ringing. I answer. He paused. No name. No hello. Just a voice I didn't recognize. And it said, "Nice numbers on that box office. Hope it stays that way." Then the line went dead. A few jurors exchanged glances. That's when it started. Meetings canceled last minute. Endorsements pulled without explanation. And the roles? They dried up like someone turned off a faucet. Cube clenched his jaw. I was confused. I hadn't pissed anyone off, at least not in public. Then came the invites again. Quiet, direct. Not from assistants. From power brokers. One of them told me flat out, "Come to the summit. We'll talk about the path forward." He shook his head. I didn't go. I knew what that meant by then. He walked to the edge of the stand, eyes narrowing. 2 weeks later, a gossip blog ran a headline. Is Ice Cube unstable behind the scenes? Completely baseless. A week after that, rumors I was difficult to work with started circulating. People I'd never even met said I was arrogant, unprofessional. Cube's voice dropped into gravel. You think that's coincidence? He pointed to the prosecution table. You want to talk about patterns? Look at the ones who vanished. The singers, the actors, the comedians. Every one of them had a moment, A moment where they said no. And within months, they were either sick, burned out, or just gone. He paused, letting the silence sit heavy. Let me tell you what gone looks like. Gone is waking up and seeing your name scrubbed from a project you created. Gone is your peers not returning calls. Gone is walking into a room and feeling like you're radioactive. He took a step back, jaw locked. I almost didn't make it back. Cube's voice turned cold. You ever had a meeting where nothing is said out loud, but everything is understood? He looked straight ahead. 2006, I get invited to what they called a legacy roundtable. Some big executive's house in Brentwood. I won't say which studio, but you've seen the logo your whole life. They said it was about shaping the future of black cinema. Sounded legit. He paused, then added, they even said Oprah might stop by. The jury leaned in. I arrive. Everything's polished. Staff in white gloves, no phones. Valet takes your keys. Inside, all familiar faces, but none of them smiling. Just silence, tension, like a funeral for freedom. Cube clenched his hand slightly. They usher me into a side room. And there he is, sitting in a leather chair, wearing all black, sipping something expensive. The room was completely still. Quincy Jones. Gasps didn't even have time to form. It was as if everyone had frozen. He looked at me the way a principal looks at a kid who won't stop fighting in class. Calm, patient, but dangerous. Cube leaned forward, mimicking the posture. He says, Cube, you still think you can change a game from outside the arena? I didn't answer. He smiled, nodded, and said, you got about 6 more months to play rebel. After that, we won't be having this conversation. He let the words linger. I stood up, said I didn't know anybody's silence. He chuckled, said, son, you don't even know what you owe yet. Cube looked up. That night, on my way home, my brakes gave out. The entire courtroom inhaled as one. I was on Mulholland. Car spun out. I hit the guardrail. Barely walked away. When the police came, they said the brake line had been tampered with. But the case? No suspects. No follow-up. Just unfortunate mechanical failure. He stared down at the table. After that, I stopped getting scripts. My agent dropped me without warning. People I'd worked with for decades ghosted me overnight. He raised his head, fire back in his voice. I wasn't supposed to survive that silence. But I did. And I've been watching ever since. He looked back to the jury. Now you tell me, was that just bad luck? Or was that the cost of saying no to the architects? He held up the final photo from his folder. It was a shot of a smiling Quincy, arm around a young, unknown artist. The caption read, welcome to the circle. Cube's voice cut the air. The circle ain't a blessing. It's a leash. Cube straightened his back. His tone dropped to a precise, deadly rhythm, like every word was being carved into the courtroom walls. I mentioned Oprah earlier. A lot of y'all didn't blink. Because how could you? She's America's safe face, the voice of healing, the brand of empathy. He tilted his head slightly, as if weighing every syllable. But what happens when empathy becomes currency? When guidance is used like a gate? Let me tell you what Jamie told me. The courtroom leaned in. Right after Ray dropped, Jamie's phone rings. It's Oprah. She tells him she's proud. Says she sees greatness in him. Wants to introduce him to someone who can help shape the next phase. Cube inhaled deeply. She took him to Quincy's house. Said it was a private dinner. Just them 3. He looked straight at Diddy. But it wasn't dinner. Jamie told me he didn't touch a plate. Said it felt like an interview he didn't agree to. Lights were low. Music soft. Questions strange. At one point, Quincy said, are you ready to make sacrifices for legacy? Jamie laughed it off. Thought it was symbolic. Cube's voice cracked ever so slightly. But Oprah didn't laugh. She just nodded. Said we all did. It's the price of longevity. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge banged the gavel once. Silence returned. Jamie told me, Cube, that wasn't mentorship. That was induction. He never said exactly what happened, but he said something changed in him that night. Said when he looked at Oprah afterward, she didn't look like herself anymore. Cube stepped away from the witness stand. Now let's fast forward. 2014. Jamie tells me he's pulling back. Said he's tired of pretending. He's out. Done. He turned to the jury. A week later, someone leaks a story about Jamie getting erratic on a movie set. Project stall. Sponsors pull. Then came the health scare. He paused. And you still think this is coincidence? Then he did something no one expected. From his folder, Cube pulled out a small black hard drive, placed it on the ledge before him like a chess piece. Your Honor, I request permission to submit evidence. The judge hesitated. What kind of evidence? Cube replied, steady and sharp. Footage, file directories, metadata, a piece of the storage system Diddy used, rooms, dates, names. The judge's eyes narrowed. Authenticated. Cube nodded and decrypted. Gasps. Whispers. He looked back at the prosecution. You want to know who else was there? You want to know who else looked away? Press play. The judge granted the motion with a hesitant nod. An IT specialist from the prosecution approached the drive, inserted it into a government-issued laptop. The screen flickered, then loaded a simple interface. Folders named by dates, locations, and code names. Cube didn't blink. Go to folder, Venus.mia.2015. A video loaded. Grainy, but clear. A lavish room, velvet drapes, marble floors, dim golden lighting. In the center, a masked figure kneeling on a red pillow. Behind them, laughter. Soft jazz. A camera silently zooming in. Then came the faces. First, Diddy. Calm, glass in hand. Second, Jamie Foxx. Smiling, but his eyes were distant. Third, gasps erupted, Oprah Winfrey. She wasn't masked. She wasn't smiling. She was giving instructions. And then, the fourth face appeared. A man stepping into frame, shaking hands with Diddy, laughing casually, clinking glasses. The room froze. Jay-Z. The courtroom exploded. Order! The judge shouted, banging the gavel. Order in this court. Reporters dropped pens. Jurors gaped. The defense team scrambled, Diddy visibly twitching. The prosecution looked like they'd been punched. Cube stood motionless, watching the screen. I didn't want to believe it either, he said. But I got that clip from a former revolt engineer. One who ran. One who left the country and smuggled 3 terabytes of this before they could shut him down. He turned back to the jury. I'm not saying Jay ran the machine, but he walked through its hallways. And when the alarms went off, he didn't yell fire. He ducked. Then he stared at Diddy. You lit the match. Jay-Z's appearance had not been listed in any subpoena, not in the initial witness files. His name wasn't supposed to be on tape, but there it was. Cube exhaled, as if letting go of a burden he had carried for years. They always said, you'll never get footage. You'll never get proof. But you're looking at it now. The judge leaned back slowly. A pause hung like a guillotine in the air. This, Cube said, voice rising for the first time, is just one room, one night, from one folder. What do you think the rest looks like? The gavel didn't fall again. It didn't have to. The courtroom wasn't in control anymore. The system was on trial now. Cube didn't linger. After the footage stopped, he gave the room one last look. His eyes passed over the jury, the judge, the press, then landed on Diddy. You built an empire on silence, he said softly. But silence don't last. It leaks. It bleeds. And one day it screams. Then, without waiting for permission or response, Cube stepped down from the stand. He didn't need applause. He didn't need approval. His truth had already detonated. As he walked out of the courtroom, the sound of camera shutters and murmured gasps followed him. But he didn't look back. Outside, chaos reigned. News vans swarmed the courthouse like hornets. Journalists shouted his name. Paparazzi pushed forward. But Cube said nothing. His team parted the crowd. His car pulled up. He got in. And just like that, he vanished into the New York dusk. Back inside, the court sat stunned. The judge called a recess, but no one moved. The prosecution huddled. The defense scrambled. One juror wiped away a tear. Another clutched their notepad like it held more than paper, like it held a piece of the truth they could never unsee. The press room went nuclear. Headlines rolled out in seconds. Cube drops bomb. Oprah, Jay-Z, Jamie Foxx all named in court. Secret footage leaked in Diddy trial. Hollywood faces exposed. System collapse. What Ice Cube just did might change everything. Social media lit up. Hashtag surged. Hashtag the Cube files. Hashtag system unveiled. Hashtag Jay-Z footage. Hashtag Oprah named. Back at Rock Nation, Jay-Z's team issued a brief, frantic statement. Mr. Carter continues to deny any knowledge or involvement in events described. Any video out of context cannot represent full truth. But it was too late. The court of public opinion was already in session. In the days that followed, silence became impossible. The entertainment world fractured. Talk shows halted scheduled interviews. Talent agencies scrambled to re-examine contracts. Studio executives held emergency meetings behind closed doors. And in quiet corners of Beverly Hills, producers whispered to each other like survivors of a political coup. Hollywood wasn't processing a trial anymore. It was facing a reckoning. Cube, meanwhile, remained silent, but only in public. His team confirmed that over a dozen whistleblowers had reached out within 48 hours. Anonymous footage, NDAs, recordings, each more disturbing than the last. I said what I needed to say, he finally told a trusted journalist off camera. Now it's time for everyone else to decide what they're going to do with it. He didn't file lawsuits. He didn't monetize the moment. Instead, he funded a quiet task force, legal, digital, and journalistic, to begin archiving what came next. Across the country, aspiring artists began posting with the hashtag not me too but them, a riff not on victimhood, but on exposure. I didn't sell out. One young actor posted, I got out. Thanks, Cube. Cube's final public message came in the form of a 1-minute video on his social media. No music, no graphics, just him in a studio, face lit by a single hanging bulb. You don't gotta believe me, he said. Truth don't care if it gets applause. But I know this, once you see the strings, you can't pretend the puppet dances on its own. He paused. And if you're watching this, wondering if your favorite star is involved, ask yourself something. Why do you love them so much? Because they're free? Or because they're the best behaved prisoner in the room? He leaned in. Silence used to be protection. Now, it's evidence. The video ended. Hollywood was shifting. The trial continued. But something fundamental had cracked. Not just reputations, not just careers, but the illusion that success in showbiz was simply about talent. Cube had rewritten the rules. And even though he'd walked away from the courtroom, one truth remained. They didn't silence him. He silenced them.